So welcome everybody. We are having an interview with Nicole Yarling. We call her affectionately Nicky. And it's very hard to describe her style because she seems so versatile at every style. So I thought it was very important, particularly for Broward College, to see someone who is so accomplished that lives right in our neighborhood and has been part of the South Florida scene for so long, and to let her speak very freely about what it means to be a jazz musician, what it means to be a female jazz musician in our local environment. And also she's very, very involved with developing young jazz musicians. And so we'll ask her a lot of different questions. What's also interesting about Nicky Yarling is that she plays rock and pop and blues and gospel so well. And the thing is, she's just Nicky Yarling. That's the biggest compliment. When Nicky's on the gig, everyone is happy that she's there. She has a very strong presence on the stage, and we're so happy every time. I mean, I'm happy to say that I've played with Nicky more times than I can count. All right, so welcome.
Thank you. And your check's in the mail for all of that.
We're catching Nicky Yarling after already performing. She's having a busy weekend, and even in the midst of this pandemic, which we will discuss, let's start by asking you a question about being a female jazz musician, because I'm sure there are many aspiring female musicians, jazz, whatever, that would like to hear your side of the story.
Well, let me preface this. Thanks for all the kind words, Lou. Let me preface this by saying I play jazz, but I consider myself kind of, I guess the word is holistic. I mean, I play a lot of different styles of music. What jazz did afford me to do was it gave me the facility and it gave me a skill set to be able to figure out other styles of music, which is what I really love. I love everything. Being a woman playing an instrument, that's the more of the issue, because there's lots of great singers. There's also lots of great instrumentalists. But when I'm a little older, we'll say, I won't tell you how old, but when I was coming up, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I wanted to learn to play jazz. And the way I learned was by going out and hanging on people's coattails and going to jam sessions. And the jazz community seems like a ginormous community. But in New York, older musicians want to share what they know. I mean, I got guidance and mentoring from the Basie band guys, just amazing group of people. That's a story for another day. But I also ran up against older kind of chauvinistic musicians that felt like they would say things like, yeah, you play good for a girl.
Oh.
Or, yeah, you play really good. Now you should maybe put on a dress. And as I just told you, it affected me psychologically, it affected me in a strange way. Um, I remember once a friend of mine made my face up and I was looking pretty, but I was on my way to a jam session and I took all the makeup off my face. And to me, that says a lot and it weighs a lot because I didn't even think about it at the time. I wasn't trying to be butch or manly. I'm a woman through and through. But I wanted to be a peer of these guys. And I didn't want them to think that because I was a young woman that I should be treated differently. So that's always been very important to me. And that's what I tell young musicians, men and women, especially women though. Learn enough about music. I don't care if you learn to read it, learn to write it, learn to play, but learn enough so that you can stand on equal footing with anybody that you play with. Because then you'll gain the respect. If you don't respect yourself, then no one else will respect you. So that I hope I answered the question.
Okay, now let's talk about the violin in particular because your instrument, I mean, you're a singer as well, and I'm sure, like me, you get booked as a singer and a violinist, sometimes just as a violinist, sometimes just as a singer. So, how do they fit together and how do they work together? I mean, how is your singing and your violin playing connected?
Well, it's funny because for me, now I trust me. You hear me say this. I am not equating myself to Chet Baker. But the mindset of the way I approach playing and singing is that along the lines of Chet Baker. And I didn't model myself after that. But what I realized about Chet Baker is his phrasing when he plays trumpet is almost identical to the way he sings. And I didn't set out intentionally to do that. I just realized that the music. All right, let me go back and say this because I said this to somebody else. I've said it to a lot of people, but I said this to somebody else the other day, a young musician I was working with. Um, if you have music inside of you, right, the instrument is a vehicle. And so, no matter what, if I was playing spoons, um, it's really about my expression being manifested on an instrument. It just happens to be the violin,
Yes.
right? So my mindset, the way I sing, the way I use vibrato, the way I phrase is exactly what goes on inside of my head. Um, and so that to me is a connection.
So we can then say that, and I think Louis Armstrong is probably the first template of this. No matter what instrument you're playing, you definitely want to listen to singers.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, here's a weird one for you. One of my favorite violinists ever in existence is a guy named Stuff Smith. And weird, oddly enough, Stuff Smith wanted to be Louis Armstrong on violin. So a lot of his phrasing and a lot of his thought process is like Louis Armstrong. He swung like a crazy man. That's one style of playing. But yeah, I really see the connection. If you think about somebody like Ella Fitzgerald, actually Dizzy encouraged her to scat sing. And she led Chick Webb's band for a short while. So
Yes.
she had so much of an instrumentalist uh, approach to singing in her head that the scat singing was a normal progression. To me, it made a logical progression. She could sing, and if you ever heard Dizzy Gillespie do it, it's scary amazing. And a lot of the people, you mentioned Wynton, all of the people that I think of, um, they could manifest whatever they play on the horn through their voice. So yes, there really is a connection there.
So speaking of connection, Nikki, let's go in a little different direction. When you're playing, do you think people understand what you're doing? Do you think the audience understands what you're doing?
Okay, that was a good question. Because I tell students a lot of the time, they're concerned when they get up to sing or play or do whatever they do musically. they're concerned a lot of the time with what people are thinking. And the thing that I tell them is I wouldn't be concerned at all. The audience wants to be, in a lot of instances, wants to do what you do. And they may not have the courage, or they may not want to put in the time to learn the instrument or to sing. And to me, the complexity of music sometimes goes over people's head. But the thing that people get, and I honestly believe this, is the story you're trying to tell and your sincerity. Those are the two things. It doesn't matter, you know, if they know, you know, you're playing a so and so a flat seven or I mean a flat five over. That doesn't matter. What I because here's a case in point. When you hear somebody, especially with the blues, if you hear somebody sing and they sing a melisma or an inflection, or as my students call them, when they run, right? The audience could be sitting there, and all of a sudden you'll hear somebody go, "Yeah," or or moan or groan, and they're reacting to what touches their gut. And I think that that's what's more important. Whether or not they understand technically or theoretically what you're playing or what you're saying doesn't matter. As long as they get your story and they get your sincerity. And people do know, just like animals, when people are sincere and when they're, you know, when they're pretentious or trying to put on airs or be something that they're not. They can tell the difference.
Then you're really in this line between playing your instrument and entertaining. And how do you think that works when you're on stage?
Most of the time,
Think it's
I'm
50?
in my own, no, no, I'm in my own little, I'm in my zone. And I think that's the beauty of it. People read, people know if you're enjoying what you're doing, and they go on the trip with you. They enjoy it because you're enjoying it. And you may be having a terrible day, but if you're up there and you're playing and you're singing and you're into it, the audience reads that and they get it. And I think they like the feedback. I'm not the queen of entertainment. I don't do somersaults. I don't, you know, I'm really about the music first. And my philosophy is I'm giving you a piece of who I am. And I really hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, I'm sure there's somebody that will. You know, it's really about I do music because I love music and it comes from my heart and it comes from my soul. And that's what I was saying by the story. This is me telling you my story. Whatever my story is today, whatever style of music, that's my story today. This next song is a song I wrote, and I'll say it was co-written by my brother. Because he always said to me, "You just don't understand." And I didn't until recently. Here we go. You know, my brother said, I said he told me, "You just don't understand until you walked a mile in my shoes, the shoes of a black man." He told me many times over and over, I just couldn't understand. I never walked that mile the way that he did in the shoes of a black man. Yes, we would argue for hours. I tried to make him see that it was all his crooked thinking and not reality. Now I'm the one that got it twisted, and now I understand. 'Cause every day I walk the shoes of a black man. Hey, the shoes of a black man. The shoes of a black man. The shoes of a black man. My brother was 6'2". He was an ex-boxer and ex-marine. And he always would say to me, "You don't understand. You're not a big black man." And I'd go back and forth with him because I knew he had a short fuse. So he and I would argue and go back and forth. And years and years later, I'm looking at our social environment, excuse me, our social culture now. And I started thinking about the fact that a lot of the people that are getting shot and killed are big black men. They're moving targets. And so I credited him with the song or part of the song because I now realize that it's not the song, you could change the lyrics to work for anyone who's a less than, who's an other, who's not considered an equal in this country. Um, we can all talk about their plight and we can all say, oh, we sympathize and empathize, but we haven't walked in their shoes.
Speaking of styles, let's go into, do you play different styles differently?
For me, I have to figure out mechanically what makes the music sound the way it does. Then I can go back. Is it, you think about phrasing, you think about chord structure, you think about, without getting really, really complicated, I would go back and listen to people and mimic what they did so that when I go and play in a certain style, I may still sound like me, but at least I'm in the ballpark of sounding authentic in the style.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Someday, someday. I do believe we shall overcome someday, someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. One day, someday. Walk hand in hand. One day, someday, I am not afraid. I am not afraid. I'm not afraid. This day, today, deep in my heart, I do believe we
So let's then talk about the experience of playing gospel music.
It's funny because I teach at a historically black university. And the cool thing about that is a lot of the kids grew up in the church. So a lot of what I learned from them, I learned through them. The two schools I'm teaching at are the total opposite.
Ah,
Most of my students at Florida Memorial come in with incredible musicality, but learning to read and write music is a formality. Right? And I keep explaining to them, I can play something on the piano, which my piano playing is limited, but I can play something on the piano or I can sing something and they can sing it or play it right back to me. But when I ask them what they're playing, they're going, right? But then on the other hand, the University of Miami, a lot of those students come in, they learn to play music with their eyes. I like to say that, not
right,
necessarily develop their ears.
right.
And so, yeah, they can write stuff down, but they don't have this. And to me, this is even more important because this, like I said, the music comes from you. So both are interesting and both are, to me, the important thing is to have the blend of both.
So let's go into your particular love of Neil Young.
Okay. So, there are people that when I say, and I'm on a jazz gig and I say I'm going to do a Neil Young song, they look at me like, huh? But then there's the people in the back that really do, they're closet Neil Young lovers. For me, he's he's brilliant in that it's the simplicity of the music and the lyrics. He says so much in the simplest way. Like I have a friend I've never seen. He hides his head inside a dream. Someone should call him and see if he could come out to try to lose the down that he found. You know, you think about that and you go, kind of sounds like a hippie, but that's somebody that maybe is wound up in their head and depressed, and but it's the beauty of it's not just that song; it's the beauty of his lyrics that drives me.
I got news for you, yes I do. Don't no woman wanna do nothing, man.
Let's talk a little bit about touring. Can you talk to students about should they go on the road? Should they desire? Is there something that they learn on the road that they wouldn't if they stayed home?
Hopefully, we're going to see the end of this COVID epidemic, and you guys will have a chance to go back out and perform. Excuse me. I know now, things are different, and you can become famous, if you will, online, right? You can go viral, and Ellen will have you on her show. You can go viral, and Jimmy Fallon will help you get a record deal. All of that, I get that. But there is still the idea of going out and playing for a live audience and connecting with an audience that really, really works. And it's not old school, it really works. I've had the honor and pleasure of lugging my own stuff and traveling through Europe. We would get in a van and travel and play. And then I've also had the pleasure of getting on a Learjet and having somebody else flip my equipment. So I've run the gamut. And I enjoy, five-star hotels, and I also enjoy staying in a youth hostel. That's what we got when we were touring. The experience is like no other. I mean, really, really amazing to go out and be in a different city, and play for a live audience. Let me tell you, I forgot. I honestly forgot. I'm not rich, but I've seen the entire United States. I think there's a couple of states I haven't been to, I haven't been to Alaska. I didn't go to Alaska, but I did go to Hawaii. Um, as a result of music, just music. I've seen much of Europe. I mentioned earlier I went to India,
Mm.
which was scary. I haven't been to Africa. Um, I met on Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. I endless, and this is all because of music. I wouldn't have this kind of money to travel. So
Right.
yeah, I agree. It's like you meet all kinds of people. Your perspective on people will change. Trust me.
Wow.
I hear people say things about people that are not like them, and it breaks my heart.
So let's wrap up here. I don't know what we want to say about your what you can offer to students. If anyone wants to contact you, if they're interested in pursuing musically, what should they do? Can they go to a website? Can they?
My website is a wreck. I'm being very honest here. But I'm a very public person. I'm on Facebook and I post a lot of stuff on Facebook that I do. Um, I'm, an open book. And if someone comes to me and they need advice or they want ideas, I have a very busy brain and I don't mind sharing. I don't ever mind sharing, and I make time for people. So, you can reach me through Facebook. You can instant message me, or that's the easiest way. I don't want to give out my phone number,
No, don't do that. No,
but you can reach me.
and you do have a group of people that you have jam sessions for young musicians.
Yeah, I started this group. It was an outgrowth of the Jazz Encounters, which we're about 11 and a half years into doing. Thank you, WDNA, for that. Now we're doing it online. But one night, Ira Sullivan was playing, and there were a bunch of kids sitting in the audience, and they were chomping at the bit. They wanted to play. So I'm watching them, and I know what's going through their minds. I'm going to play it. So they get up because the idea of the Jazz Encounters was, or still is, an artist will play for an hour, and then that artist will mentor, host the jam session. So the jam session started, and the kids would spend 10 minutes. What do you want to play? What do you want to play? You know, they didn't know. So there was no real protocol. So I said to them, hey, look, if I start a workshop on Saturdays, will you come? And so everybody said yes. And of course, a lot of those kids are gone, but we're going on to our 8th year. And the things that I say that I offer are nuance and opportunity. We work on stuff that you don't necessarily work on in schools. No offense to any educators. You got a big group of kids and you have a responsibility to put a performance together. So you have to make sure that their embouchure is correct and the notes are somewhat in tune and I have the opportunity to work on putting them in front of a rhythm section and having them figure out how to make music and to arrange on the spot and not necessarily read music, but to use your ears to hear music, things like that. And then we have gigs, and I pay them. They actually work
Yeah.
like working musicians. That's important to me. Even with that said, several of the kids are now either at Juilliard or Manhattan. They're young arts winners, they're downbeat winners. Now, did I do that? No. But what I did do was I gave them opportunity to grow long before they get to college, long before they get in these programs, the magnet. Some of the kids were not in magnet programs. So I feel proud in that respect that when I say we work on nuance and I give them opportunity, that's what I do.
Thank you so much, Nicole Yarling. We hope you all spend some time going through some of the subtleties of what Nikki has mentioned here. And by the way, I will put up the names that she mentioned, and please do what she mentioned. Do some research. If she mentioned Chet Baker, find out who that is, but more importantly, make sure you listen to Chet Baker. Make sure you understand what she's talking about musically. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lou. I really enjoyed this.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain and we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, though it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things that you need to borrow, for no one can feel those of your needs if you can't let it go. You just call on me, brother. You need a friend. We all need somebody to lean on. Just might have a problem that you'll understand. You all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be a friend, yeah. I'll help you carry on, though it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean